my name is Aaron Clegg, and I'm going to be giving my pen testing report for Lab 10, Web Pen Testing. So to start out this report, what was the purpose of this lab? The purpose of this lab was to perform scans that get generalized use of different tools like Nikto, Burp Suite, and DAM Vulnerable Web Application. We were gaining familiarization with these tools specifically for the purposes of ethical hacking and pen testing. Now, we use different tools beginning with Nikto and transitioning to Burp Suite and DVWA. So how did we use these tools to test and bolster our skills? Well, we first used Nikto to initiate a host scan, as seen here. And as a result of doing this host scan, we were able to examine plugins available, testing versions of software located on our test server, as seen here. We were able to check HTTP option and which client policies the server accepts here. And then we were able to test the server for vulnerabilities and subsequently generate an HTML report from these scans. The second part of our lab involved the use of Burp Suite, which after being able to configure our scans like turning intercept off and adding specific IP addresses to our scope, we were able to then create a sitemap using Burp Suite, seen here. Now we were able to then use DVWA and expand our sitemap creation, as seen here. To which Burp Suite was then able to capture our username and password for DVWA, and we were able to subsequently review the information and data captured, like cookie information and the username and password. This leads us to our final part of the lab, which is using DAM Vulnerable Web Application in conjunction with Burp Suite to attempt to brute force a web application. We first selected our payload position and set our payload options and payloads being sent. We were then able to initiate our brute force attack and discover the username and password of the web application that were being used. In this case, the username and password were both admin. So overall, Lab 10 was very information intensive. We were able to first start our lab off with Nikto to initiate a host scan, test for software version, HTTP options, and accepted client policies. We were able to then use this information to run a series of tests against the server to generate an HTML report, which we were then able to view in Firefox. The second part of this lab was used in Burp Suite, which we were able to configure it to create a sitemap, and we were able to expand our sitemap by opening up DVWA, which was then used to launch a brute force attack. And as we were unable to log in, we were able to use a cluster bomb payload on the website and run possible passwords to expose the correct login credentials. So that being said, with these tools that we used, what would the level of risk be for these threats, specifically for host scans, creating sitemaps, and brute force attacks, and how do we remediate these threats? So to start, the level of risk for host scans can vary obviously on the vulnerabilities that are identified. In this case, we were able to use the host scan to scan multiple facets of the web application like plugins available, software version of the server, and HTTP and client policies the server accepts. This information can lead to someone to be able to gather IP addresses, host names, which can help attackers map the network topology and identify potential targets. It can expose open ports and running services, network architecture, etc., which can all help an attacker gain the tools and information needed to subject your organization to a potential breach. The main thing that you can do to help prevent this is by ensuring that your organization utilizes firewalls, regularly updates software and systems, implement access control, and use intrusion detection and prevention systems. Those same principles can also be implemented and applied for prevention of site mapping as well, but you would also want to initiate things like HTTPS protocols to ensure secure communication, or SSL and security plugins that can help combat that specifically. So now that we have addressed host scans and site mapping, what about brute force attacks? Brute force attacks can leave your organization open to having personal and financial data exposed, malware being spread, and having your overall reputation damaged. And there are several different types of brute force attacks as well, but how do you protect yourself against them? Well, first you would want to ensure that you have rules in place which require complex passwords, limit failed login attempts to automatically lock you out of a certain amount of failed attempts, ensure you are using secure protocols like encryption or hashing, and lastly, initiating two-factor or multi-factor authentication adds an additional layer of protection to combating these brute force attacks. This concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Here are my references, and thank you for watching.